There are many reasons why it may be very difficult for you to understand spoken French when visiting France or watching a French TV series. We speak quickly, we eat letters, and of course there is the matter of Verlan. Something that I can guarantee you've never learned at school. Verlan is a type of French slang where the syllables are inverted in order to make a new word. Yes, this means that there is a whole new group of vocabulary to learn. Don't panic, I promise that it doesn't have to be complicated. Today I will explain what Verlan is and what are the most common words that you might hear if you were to listen to a French conversation. Ready? C'est part. Here are some common words in Verlan. Une meuf for a woman or a girl. Un yinche for a dog. Un yinche. We also have c'est part for let's go that we just saw. C'est part. They're all made from common words, but the beginning is placed at the end. That's how parti becomes ti part. It goes backwards. And c'est parti, let's go becomes c'est part in this kind of slang, c'est part. And that's why in Verlan, if you hear someone talking about un yinche, it is actually un chien, and it means a dog. Sometimes to make it a bit more difficult for you, we cut the final vowel of the word if it doesn't sound good. For example, if we take the Verlan for a woman, it is une femme in correct French. Une femme. If we want to make the Verlan form of une femme, we have to separate the two syllables into fa and me. Femme. And we put them like that, and it makes me fa, which should be the kind of Verlan for une femme. But of course, in spoken French, we cut the a at the end because it's a bit ugly, and it becomes une meuf. Une meuf for une femme. I know there's a bit of mental gymnastics at first, and that is actually the point. Let's talk a bit about the Verlan itself. Verlan is a technique to build slang words, but it is not a whole slang language by itself, really. And words in Verlan are relatively easy to understand once you know the rules as I just explained. But it is much harder to use in an organic, natural, spontaneous way. Since the 1950s, it has been associated with the Parisian suburbs and lower class urban youth. Nowadays, some people use Verlan a lot, while others don't. And in between, depending on your social circles, the way that you were raised, some Verlan seem quite common. However, with other Verlan words, you're going to sound like you're trying too hard to sound like a young suburban guy. That's why I am teaching them to you so you can identify them when you're hearing them, but I recommend that you don't necessarily try to use them in your everyday French because it can be really hard to pull off. However, you can still use the Verlan that your friends around you are using. It means that you really understood your social circle. But be careful with some subtleties, because sometimes there is some hidden in Verlan. Cimer can be a bit more sarcastic than a simple merci for thank you, for example. But it is still very important to know about these words and how to understand Verlan, because it is used a lot in everyday spoken French, including French pop culture. So if you hear a French word that seems to be Verlan, try to figure out what it means. Try to place the last syllable of the word at the beginning and see if it makes a word. Of course, you might need to add a vowel in there somewhere. For instance, if your French friend tells you « Je suis chez WAM », Je suis chez WAM. Of course, you probably don't know the word WAM, so let's try to put the last part at the beginning so the M goes first. It makes moi, and moi is myself. So chez WAM is actually chez moi. at my place. Of course, I know that the feeling is that if you have to figure out what the word in Verlan is, it really means that you're not in the same circle, you're not one of them yet. But keep trying. Honestly, not understanding some slang, especially some Verlan, is absolutely normal even for me. The funny thing is that lots of students ask me, am I too old for that? When actually the Verlan itself is very old. It was not invented by this generation. A 40-year-old movie has Verlan in its title. I will talk about that movie in the blog post for today's lesson, where you will also find a full list of the vocabulary mentioned in today's video. The link to it is in the description below the video if you're watching on YouTube. It is completely free. Now let's cover some common Verlan vocabulary together. Now here is a very famous word in Verlan. It is Verlan. Yes, of course, Verlan comes from à l'envers, which means upside down, back to front, backwards. And when you put à l'envers back to front, it makes Verlan. Verlan, it is the name of this technique of slang. Here are some other words in Verlan that you need to know. Ouf. Ouf is Verlan for fou. Fou. And fou is crazy. We also have la teuf. La teuf is Verlan for la fête. La fête, the party. We also have vénère. Can you guess this one? Vénère is Verlan for énervé. Énervé for angry. We also have a couple of words in Verlan where the word originates from a common slang word. For example, un cum. Un cum. Can you guess? Un cum. It is Verlan for un mec. Un mec, which is an informal way to say a guy or even a boyfriend. Un mec. Then we have pécho. Can you guess? Pécho. Pécho is Verlan for choper. Choper. And choper means to grab or to kiss or even to make out in slang. Choper and pécho. After that, we have théma. Can you guess? Théma is mater. Mater, and mater is to look or to look at. And this is another slang word, mater. You also have words like relou. Relou for lourd. Lourd. In slang, it is annoying. Literally, lourd means heavy, but it is also a slang for annoying. And here the Verlan of lourd is relou. And this one only means annoying. It doesn't mean heavy. Relou is quite common and you might hear it a lot in French pop culture. Relou sounds close to chelou. Chelou. Chelou means louche. Louche. And it is a slang word for weird or suspicious. And this one is another very mild but very common slang word. Of course, there is a flurry of Verlan. I hear it a lot, but I don't necessarily use it all the time or even some ever, but my friends do. It's really a matter of personality and circles. For example, we have zarbe, zarbe, or sometimes they say zarbi. Zarbi for bizarre, bizarre. This one means weird, weird. Zarbe, zarbi for bizarre. Then we have rush, rush. This one is hard to guess. It is cher, cher. Rush for cher, which means expensive. Something you might hear a lot in pop culture as well is teubé. Teubé is Verlan for bête, bête, which means stupid. Teubé for bête. You might also hear yeuve for les vieux, yeuve for the vieux. You might also hear a lot, especially obviously in cop dramas, keuf, keuf for keufli, that in non-slang means flic. And flic is a slang word for policeman. keuf, keufli, flic. That is policeman. We also have les veuches. Les veuches is les cheveux. Les cheveux. Les veuches is for les cheveux, which is hair. Yes, you will listen to Netflix differently after today's lesson. More ironically, you have chambé for méchant. Chambé, méchant. Méchant literally means bad, mean, nasty, etc. But in slang, it means cool and impressive. So yes, it's the opposite. And this is especially true for its Verlan version. C'est chambé is absolutely great. It means it's really cool. But you see, even as I am doing this lesson right now, I am not sure if chambé is actually old-fashioned or is it used ironically now? I don't know. And this is why it's so difficult to use it when you're not really into the culture, and that's why I don't necessarily recommend that you try using it. But it is very important to understand what people are actually saying. Oh, and finally, a very famous Verlan name that you might already know, Stromae. Yes, because Stromae is Verlan for maestro. Stromae is Verlan for maestro. And now if you want to keep improving your everyday spoken French, I highly recommend you click right here on your screen to access my next lesson. I will see you there. Allez, salut!